Thanks, Sam. Well, ICT Group Vox Telecom posted a 41% fall in interim headline earnings per share. Now, that's despite revenue ticking up 22% to over 1 billion rand compared to the same period last year. Operating profit fell some 16% to over 56.6 million rand, while gross margins came down slightly to 22% from 23%. Joining me now for more is CEO Doug Reid. Doug, thanks very much for joining us. Just reading some analysis out on the results today, specifically from Lindsay MacDonald at Frost & Sullivan, saying although you saw this large decrease in headline earnings per share, there's still much to recommend about Vox Telecom going forward for investors. And perhaps let's start with your competitive edge, where you're playing in the SMME market. It's certainly a space that Neotel has not been able to address at this stage.
Yes, look, we've been competing for 10 years, so we've learned how to compete in this sector. We're getting there, slowly but surely. As products or areas become competitive and as we can compete in those areas, we sort of getting in there, sort of driving a wedge into the crack. So slowly but surely across the whole segment, we're just increasing market share or in areas where we can.
Are you going to move to the bundling of services, or are you doing that already?
We do that to a certain extent, and in some cases we've unbundled. If our competitors are bundled, we've unbundled, allowing consumers to pick and choose.
Explain that a little bit further for me.
For example, our ADSL voice phone can come just with the phone, or can become bundled with the phone, with the ADSL package as well as the ADSL line. So we've got a couple of choices for the consumer.
Gross margins slightly under pressure. Do you see stabilization at these levels, or are you still taking into account this tough economic environment where you're going to continue to cut costs?
In some areas it's under pressure, and it is on a sort of downward trend, but we're sort of countering that with other areas where it's on an upward trend. For example, the telco component, we've increased margins there from 12% to around about 30%. To compensate for some of the pressure we're having on some of the products that we're reselling, for example.
As you say, you have been in this arena for around about 10 years. Going to your competitive advantage where the SMME is concerned, can you just elaborate slightly on your strategy there?
We have got a conventional strategy. One of the strategies is via franchise outlets geographically around the country. That works quite well, although that's been emulated by a bit of the opposition. We launched Vox Telepreneur, which is slightly different. We've moved out of competing against price and service, etc. on the area, and we've allowed our customers to earn a rebate as well as earn a part-time income, or if they really want to, make it a little bit of a business. So that's an area where no one can compete.
And what take-up are you seeing on that Vox Telepreneur?
It's obviously just started. It's only about a year old, but it's growing pretty fast. It's about 8 to 10% a month. We're very pleased with it, and it's getting to the right sort of economies of scale now, so it's working quite nicely.
With the new licenses coming into play, have you seen a change in the competitive environment? It must be very fragmented at this stage.
Well, it's actually not. You know, the barriers to entry are huge in this business, so I don't think many things have changed.
So a number of those smaller players haven't actually come to the fore despite the licensing changes?
No, the economies of scale are just too big. Although there are new entrants like Vodacom Business and Neotel, obviously, they're very disruptive. But, you know, we've been expecting that for a while now, so...
What are you expecting from the next 6 months? I mean, as we said, a large fall in headline earnings per share, down 41% over this period. Are you going to start reaping the rewards where some of those acquisitions were concerned?
Yes, we're actually paying for them at the moment with integration issues around efficiencies, etc. But what we found that a lot of that drop is due to the amortization charge, which is the write-off for the goodwill we did when we acquired businesses. That's increased radically. We were writing it off at 2% a month. It's now 4% a month. And in rand terms for this year coming forward, it's a reduction of about 26 million after tax.
So ultimately, what can shareholders look forward to if you look at the business now over the next 2 years?
Well, the next 6 months will be better than the first 6 months. In terms of what our focus is at the moment is EBITDA and cash generation. Both of those grew very nicely. We grew EBITDA at about 10–11%, and we generated 80 million rands worth of cash. So that's our current focus. And then next year, a lot of the investment we'll be putting in this year, and a lot of the new swing to other services, etc., will start paying off, and we'll start getting back on track on our strategy, which took a bit of a hiccup last year.
Just looking at your acquisition strategy, of course, you've gone through a bit of a consolidation period now, but you did go over or after an aggressive acquisition strategy, and a lot of that was done with borrowed money, which obviously has now become very expensive given the current economic environment. In hindsight is also always a perfect science, but would you have perhaps been a little less aggressive on that acquisition strategy?
Yeah, we did make one or two mistakes, but ultimately it was a window of opportunity that wasn't going to be around for very long. And we also used a lot of share price issues, so we had a really high rating, so we could use paper to buy the businesses. So that helped, and I think on the long term we won't regret it, because it's taken competitors out and it's given us more market share. And it's also allowed us to, the customer in this business, acquiring a customer is very, very expensive. So it keeps the competitors out.
One of the other elements that Lindsay MacDonald has pointed to is that she expects the company will be moving into the provision of managed services, such as data storage and VPN in the near future. Can you comment on that?
No, we've been in that for a while, especially around DataPro, and we're very strong, especially in the mid-sized VPNs. In other words, smaller companies with lots of multi-branch shops, etc. We're very strong in that area.
All right, so apologies on that front, because as I said, this is out directly after your results, and it's one of the analysts who covers your stock. Coming back to the future of the telecommunications environment in South Africa, do you think we're going to go from strength to strength, considering we seem to be past the regulatory bundling that we used to see a while ago?
Look, from a overall growth of the industry itself, it's going to be extremely good. As the market, or as the pricing drops, the demand curve is extremely elastic, so that's very positive, although they're saying that there's more competitors, so it's a little bit offset. Unfortunately, it's not all rosy, but we're happy.
And your balance sheet, just quickly talk to me about your balance sheet right now. Are you in a strong position going forward? Are you going to still look for other acquisitions, or is your acquisitive strategy now over?
We haven't got a strategy to acquire anything, especially this year. Mainly because we need to consolidate and just...
So it's still all about this consolidation phase?
And just enhance efficiencies across the group and get everything under control. Although we will look at it, but ultimately there isn't really anything to buy.
Doug,
unless we buy something bigger than ourselves.
Unless you buy something bigger than yourselves. Well, I'll let you say it. Doug, thanks very much for joining us. That was Doug Reid. He's the CEO of Vox Telecom. Turning to the gold sector now, DRD Gold.